I want to start with a sound. The specific sound of a smoke detector battery dying. That chirp. The one that happens at 3 in the morning. The one that is impossible to sleep through and that sends you stumbling through a dark house looking for which detector is making it so you can pull the battery and get back to sleep. I was 31 years old when I heard that chirp. My husband was traveling for work. I was alone in the house. I climbed on a chair in the hallway and I pulled the smoke detector off the ceiling to get to the battery. And I found something that was not a battery. It was a device. Small. Black. Roughly the size of a thumb drive. Tucked behind the battery compartment in a way that someone with small hands and patience had clearly put there intentionally. I stood on that chair in my hallway at 3 in the morning and I turned the device over in my hands and I understood, with the specific, cold clarity of someone who has just found something they were not supposed to find, exactly what it was. A recording device. I put the smoke detector back on the ceiling. I put the device in my pocket. I went back to bed. I did not sleep. In the morning I started looking for more of them. I found 7. 7 recording devices in my home. In the smoke detectors, in a lamp in the living room, behind a bookshelf in the study, inside a decorative item in the kitchen that my mother-in-law had given us as a housewarming gift 2 years earlier. 2 years earlier. She had been recording us for 2 years. What I did with 7 recording devices and approximately 800 hours of audio. What I heard on those recordings. And what happened when I sat down across from my mother-in-law in her own living room and pressed play, is the story I want to tell you today. But I cannot start there. I have to start at the beginning. If you are new here, please subscribe right now and drop your country and local time in the comments. I read every single one. Now let me take you all the way back. My name is Claire Donovan. I am 33 years old. I have been married to my husband Nathan for 5 years. We live in a house in Raleigh, North Carolina that we bought in our 2nd year of marriage, and that was our home in the specific way that the word home means something more than a building. It is where we built our life together. It is also, I found out on a Tuesday night in March, where someone had been listening to that life being built for 2 years. Nathan is the kind of man who is easy to love in the specific way of someone who does not make loving him complicated. He is direct and warm and genuinely present in the way that some people are present and some people are performing presence without achieving it. He is the only child of his parents, a fact that matters to this story in ways that will become clear. His mother's name is Diane. I want to tell you about Diane. Not to make her a villain. By the time this story ends you will understand that the question of what Diane is more complicated than villain. But to describe her accurately, because accuracy is the only framework I have for making sense of what she did and what it cost and what eventually, imperfectly, resolved. Diane was 62 years old when I found the devices. She had been married to Nathan's father Richard for 38 years. She had raised Nathan as the center of her domestic universe in the specific, total way of mothers who have made their child the primary project of their adult life and who have not, in the years after the child becomes an adult, found a way to adjust the scale of that investment to fit the new reality. She loved Nathan. Completely. In the way that is real and genuine, and also, in its totality, slightly consuming for the person being loved that way. She had not wanted Nathan to marry me. Not explicitly, she was too polished for explicit. But in the specific way of someone who communicates opposition through the management of what is said and what is left out, and the careful, sustained pressure of someone who has decided on an outcome and is pursuing it through means that are technically deniable. She had begun this the week after Nathan and I got engaged. The comments about my career, I am a graphic designer, which Diane found insufficiently prestigious without ever quite saying so directly. The questions about our plans for children that carried the specific, weighted quality of questions that are actually statements. The way she positioned herself in Nathan's life as an indispensable advisor on matters that were, by any reasonable measure, ours to decide. Nathan was aware of it. He was not the kind of man who was naive about his mother. He also was not, as much as I loved him, always willing to confront it as directly as I needed him to. We managed it. The way couples manage difficult family dynamics when they love each other and are committed to the marriage and have not yet found the specific approach that addresses the specific problem without creating a different one. We managed it. For 3 years we managed it. And then I found the smoke detector. I want to tell you about the search. The morning after I found the first device, I waited until I was certain I was alone in the house. Nathan was still traveling. He was not due back until Thursday. I started in the room where I had found the first one, the hallway, and I worked outward systematically. Every room. Every smoke detector. Every decorative item. Every piece of furniture that was against a wall or near a window or in a position where a device could be placed and forgotten. I used my phone. There are apps that detect radio frequency emissions from recording devices. I had not known this before Tuesday night. By Wednesday morning I knew it with the thoroughness of someone who has spent 4 hours reading about it. I found 7 devices. I want to tell you where they were because the where tells you something specific about the intent. The hallway. The living room lamp. The study bookshelf. The kitchen decorative item. The master bedroom smoke detector. The guest room. And the home office where Nathan and I both worked from on the days we were home. Every room where conversations happened. Every room where we lived. I photographed each device before I removed it. I documented its location with handwritten notes. I bagged each one separately with the date and location written on the bag in marker. Then I sat at my kitchen table with 7 bags in front of me and I thought about what I was going to do. I did not call Nathan immediately. I thought about calling him. I picked up my phone twice and put it down twice. Not because I did not want to tell him. Because I needed to understand what I was telling him before I told him. Because walking into a conversation with your husband about the fact that someone has been recording your home for 2 years without knowing what is on the recordings felt like walking into a courtroom without knowing what the evidence says. I am a graphic designer. I am not an investigator. I am not a technologist. But I know how to research. I found a company in Raleigh that specializes in digital forensics, audio recovery, device analysis, the specific technical work of understanding what a recording device has captured and for how long. I drove there that afternoon. The technician was a woman named Sandra who had spent 20 years doing this kind of work and who received my 7 bagged devices with the specific, professional calm of someone who had seen this situation before. She said, "We can tell you what these devices recorded and for how long, and in some cases we may be able to recover the audio. The process takes 48 to 72 hours. I said, "I need to know who purchased them." She said, "That is more complicated. It depends on how they were purchased and whether there is a registration trail. But we can try." I said, "Please try." I drove home. I waited for Nathan to come back from his trip. Nathan came home on Thursday evening. I had spent 2 days deciding how to tell him. Not whether to tell him, that was never a question. But how. The specific, careful management of information that requires you to be honest about everything while also being thoughtful about the order and the framing. I sat him down at the kitchen table. I told him what I had found. I told him about the smoke detector and the chirping and the device behind the battery. I told him about the search. I told him about the 7 devices and the documentation and Sandra at the forensics company. He listened without interrupting. When I finished he was very still. Then he said, "Show me." I showed him the photographs. The documentation. The bags with the dates and locations. He looked at everything carefully. Then he said, "Who?" Not a question. A statement. The specific, flat quality of someone who has already reached a conclusion and is confirming it before they say it out loud. "I don't know yet," I said. "Sandra is working on it." He looked at the kitchen item. The decorative bowl that his mother had given us at our housewarming. He did not say anything. He did not need to. Sandra called on Saturday morning. The devices had been active for approximately 22 months. The audio recovery was partial, not everything could be retrieved, but a significant portion could. The purchase trail was traceable. The devices had been purchased online through an account registered to a name that neither Sandra nor I recognized. But the delivery address on the original purchase was not our house. It was Diane's. I want to tell you about the 48 hours after Sandra's call. Nathan and I talked for a long time on Saturday night. Not about what to do, we had not yet arrived at what to do. About what had been done. About what 22 months of recordings meant. About the specific, intimate violation of having your home, the place where you are most yourself, where you say the things you do not say anywhere else, where you are most vulnerable and most real, turned into a surveillance operation by someone who had decided that knowing was worth the doing of it. Nathan was angry in the specific, quiet way of someone whose anger runs very deep and is managed very carefully. He was also, I think, grieving. Grieving the version of his mother he had believed in. The version that was complicated and sometimes difficult but that he had understood as loving, as operating from love even when the expression of that love was problematic. This was something else. This was not love that had taken a wrong shape. This was a decision to invade. To record. To listen. Whatever the reason, and we would learn the reason eventually, the decision itself was a line that love, as Nathan understood it, did not cross. He called his mother on Sunday morning. He told her he needed to speak with her and that we were coming over. She said of course. She did not know what was coming. Diane's house is a 40-minute drive from ours. We drove in silence mostly. Not the uncomfortable silence of two people who have nothing to say. The specific, weighted silence of two people who are carrying something enormous and who have agreed, without saying it explicitly, to carry it together. We arrived. Diane opened the door. She looked at Nathan. Then at me. Something in my face told her something was different. She said, "Come in." We sat in her living room. The formal living room, not the comfortable back room where the family usually gathered. The formal one. Because this was a formal occasion. I had my laptop with me. Diane looked at the laptop. Then she looked at me. Then she looked at Nathan. Nathan said, "Mom. We need to talk about something and I need you to let us finish before you say anything." She said, "All right." He told her what we had found. The devices. The documentation. The forensics company. The purchase history. He told her everything. She was very still. When he finished she did not speak for a long time. Then she said, "Nathan?" "Mom," he said. "I asked you to let us finish." She stopped. I opened my laptop. I said, "Sandra recovered approximately 60 hours of audio from the devices. I have listened to portions of it. I want to play you something." Diane looked at the laptop. Her face was doing something I had not seen from it before. Not guilt exactly, not yet. Something more foundational. The specific expression of someone who has just understood that the thing they did in secret is no longer secret and that the exposure is happening in front of the two people it will cost the most. I pressed play. What I played her was specific. I had spent 2 days listening to recovered audio with Sandra and identifying the segments that were most directly relevant to what I needed Diane to understand. The first segment was from 8 months ago. It was Diane's voice. On the phone. In our living room, during one of her visits. Talking to someone I could not identify, a friend or a sister or someone whose voice I did not know. She was talking about Nathan. About whether Nathan was happy in the marriage. About whether she thought I was the right person for him. She said things about me that I will not repeat here in full because some of them are too specific and some of them are too painful and none of them need to be reproduced to tell this story. What I will tell you is that the things she said were not the things you say about someone you have accepted into your family. They were the things you say about someone you are building a case against. I had listened to that segment 6 times before I sat down in Diane's living room. By the 6th time it had stopped making me cry. I needed it to stop making me cry before I played it to her. I played it. Diane listened to her own voice coming from my laptop. Her face went through several things. Then I played the second segment. The second segment was from 14 months ago. It was also Diane. On the phone again. Different call. This one with Nathan's father Richard. She was telling Richard about a conversation Nathan and I had had, a private conversation in our kitchen about a difficulty we were having. Something personal and real that I will not characterize in detail because it is ours. Something that we had talked about in the privacy of our own home, believing we were alone. She was telling Richard about it. Word for word. She had been listening. And she had been reporting. I watched Diane's face as she heard herself describe, to her husband, the specific, intimate details of a private conversation between her son and his wife. The guilt arrived. Not gradually. All at once. It was visible in the specific, structural way of something that has been managed for 22 months and has suddenly run out of the management capacity to contain itself. She put her hand over her mouth. I stopped the audio. The room was very quiet. Then she spoke. And what she said was not what I expected. She did not defend herself. She did not explain herself in the specific, self-preserving way of someone who is caught and is reaching for justification. She said, "I was afraid." Just that. "I was afraid," she said again. "I was afraid he was not happy. I was afraid you were not right for each other, and I could not say it directly because every time I tried to say anything Nathan pushed back and I." She stopped. "I did not know how to ask," she said. "I did not know how to be in his life in a way that felt real anymore. He had you and he had the house and he had his life and I was on the outside of it. And I did not know how to be on the outside." She looked at Nathan. "So I listened," she said. "Which I know, was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I have known it was wrong every day since." Nathan was looking at his mother. I was looking at Nathan. Then Nathan said something that I did not expect either. He said, "Mom, why didn't you just ask me if I was happy?" She looked at him. "Because," she said, "I was afraid of the answer." The room was completely silent. I sat with what she had said. The fear underneath it. The specific, consuming fear of a mother who has made her son the center of her world for 36 years and who has found herself on the outside of his life and who has responded to that fear in the worst possible way. Not an excuse. An explanation. There is a difference. I held both things simultaneously. What she had done. Why she had done it. And I understood, sitting in her formal living room with my laptop on my knees, that the path forward, if there was a path forward, was going to require me to hold both things without collapsing one into the other. We talked for 3 hours. Not comfortably. Not without anger. Nathan's anger surfaced and was real, and Diane received it without defending herself, which was the right thing to do. Not without grief. There was grief in that room for the version of the relationship that had existed before the devices and that could not fully exist again in the same form. But honestly. More honestly than any conversation I had witnessed between Nathan and his mother in 5 years of being in this family. Because the recordings had removed the option of the managed distance. The careful surface. The appropriate performance of a relationship that was, underneath, something more complicated and more frightened than the performance suggested. The recordings had stripped all of that away. And what was underneath was a woman who was afraid and who had responded to her fear in a way that had violated everything, our privacy, our trust, our sense of our home as a place that was ours. But who was also, underneath that, simply afraid. I said something toward the end of the 3 hours that I had not planned to say. I said, "Diane, I am not going to pretend that what you did is something I can move past quickly. I cannot. What you did was a serious violation, and the rebuilding of trust, if rebuilding is even possible, is going to take a long time, and it is going to require specific, concrete things from you that I am going to name and that I need you to agree to." She waited. "But I also need you to hear something," I said. You were afraid of being outside Nathan's life. You have been outside Nathan's life because you have never found a way to be in it that did not require controlling it. The recordings were the most extreme version of that. But the pattern underneath them is older than the recordings. She was very still. If you want to be in his life, actually in it, not surveilling it, you have to learn a different way, I said. Not the recording. Not the management. The asking. The being okay with the answers you get even when they are not the ones you wanted. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, I do not know how to do that. I know, I said. That is what therapists are for. The devices were turned over to a lawyer. I consulted with an attorney about our legal options. The specific question of criminal liability for what Diane had done is more complicated than it might seem. The laws around recording in private residences vary by state and by circumstance, and the specifics of our situation required careful analysis. We made a decision. We did not pursue criminal charges. Not because what Diane did was not serious enough. It was serious enough. But because Nathan and I talked about what we wanted from the resolution of this situation, and what we wanted was not his mother in a courtroom. What we wanted was the actual thing, the genuine, rebuilt relationship that was based on something real rather than something surveilled. Criminal charges would not build that. What would build it, what we insisted on as the conditions for continuing any relationship at all, was therapy. Family therapy. Diane and individual therapy. Specific commitments about our privacy. And the specific, formal acknowledgement, in writing, signed, witnessed, of what she had done and why it was wrong. She agreed to all of it. Not easily. Not without resistance at certain points. But she agreed. She has been in therapy for 7 months. Nathan and I have been in family therapy with her for 4 months. It is slow. It is imperfect. There are sessions that are harder than others and moments when the anger returns in full and has to be processed again rather than for the last time. But it is real. More real than the managed surface of the previous 5 years. I will not tell you it is resolved because it is not resolved. These things do not resolve on the timescale of a story. They resolve on the timescale of years of consistent, difficult, genuine work. We are in the middle of the work. I want to tell you something about the smoke detector. The one I took off the ceiling at 3 in the morning. I replaced it. Obviously, you need a working smoke detector in your hallway. I bought a new one and mounted it, and it has been doing what smoke detectors are supposed to do for 7 months. But I think about that night sometimes. About the chirping. About climbing on the chair. About the specific, accidental way that the thing you were not supposed to find finds you anyway. I think about what would have happened if the battery had not died. If I had not climbed on that chair. If the device had simply kept recording until it ran out of power and been retrieved by Diane on her next visit and replaced with a new one and the cycle had continued. How long? How much? I do not have the answer to those questions because the battery dying interrupted the timeline and I will never know what the timeline would have been without it. What I know is this. The truth finds its way out. Not always quickly. Not always through the mechanism you would have chosen. Sometimes through a chirping smoke detector at 3 in the morning. But out. It always finds its way out. And when it does, when you are standing on a chair in your hallway at 3 in the morning holding something you were not supposed to find, the question is not whether to look at what you have found. The question is what you build with the truth once you have it. We are building something. Slowly. Imperfectly. Honestly. That is enough. For now. That is exactly enough. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Have you ever found something you were not supposed to find? Have you ever held something in your hands at 3 in the morning and understood that the thing you were holding was going to change everything about what you knew? And have you ever had to decide what to build with a truth that was devastating and necessary and more complicated than you expected all at once? Drop the word chirp in the comments if this story reached something real in you. Chirp for the sound that changed everything. Chirp for the accidental truths that find you when you are not looking for them. And if you are new here, subscribe. Every single day I share a new story about family, about truth, about the things we find and the things we build from what we find. I will see you in the next one. Kayla's Dark Truth.